Hi there, I'm Richard Lewis, a veteran esports journalist, as I'm sure you know if you're already watching my stuff or reading my stuff or in this channel. I'm doing another video editorial today to basically talk about some of the crazy shit I've seen going on in CSGO. I'm sure we're all aware that I've been reporting on a match-fixing story for some time now and trying to bring you evidence to light. Have been since August. And yesterday had some crazy shit go on where I got hacked. People came into my email looking, I think, to find out what communications I'd had with people, and hacked my Skype to check logs and stuff. So obviously I think a few people are getting a bit nervous about it all. But what I've noticed in the kind of backdrop of all of that is that people are talking about how skins betting is going to ruin competitive CSGO, how you should boycott CSGO Lounge and all this other ridiculous stuff. And I think it's hugely important that we actually focus on the people that are the wrongdoers in all of this. There's no real reason to leap to these conclusions as if skins betting is the problem, as if CSGO Lounge is the problem. It seems to me to be a very strange thing to arrive at, because obviously the people that are fucking over the game are dishonest players, are dishonest gamblers, are people that are offering financial inducements to players to throw games which they can then bet on and profit from. It's, ultimately leagues that maybe turn a blind eye or don't clamp down when they are presented with evidence, as we've seen in SIVO. So these are the people we should be angry with, not gambling, not the skins betting, not the sites that enable you to do it. Ultimately, they are catering to a desire. There's a want there for people to be able to do this, just as there is in mainstream sports. And I find it very perplexing, very strange that we're angry at the people for catering to that. Now, all you need to do is look at real sports to, know about the benefits of sports betting. It's very well documented. Regulated betting globally accounts for $58 billion every year, with non-regulated taking up to $430 billion. People obviously like to gamble, but one of the things people probably don't think about too much is the revenue streams where gambling actually enhances and helps the sport. So, for example, in football, in soccer, if you're an American, the FA, the Football Association over here, they actually they earn a fee for selling information that is then put onto betting websites. So statistical data, for example, that money then trickles down through the Football Association system into various programs, which can be grassroots football, it can be creating groups to look at problems in football such as institutionalized racism, it can be just enhancing the infrastructure in football. The FA probably couldn't function to a certain degree, or certainly as effective as it does, without these revenue streams. And certainly there's been arguments from the FA where they're like, well, actually, using a fixture list, we should get a fee for that. But they went to court over that. It was deemed that information is effectively in the public domain anyway. It doesn't constitute a statistical database, so therefore gambling organizations don't have to pay for it. But they found this kind of collaboration, this alliance that works, where the gambling companies, the betting companies have been able to put money into the Football Association, and the Football Association can use it for direct good. There's no argument this happens. Obviously, as well, if you've ever watched sponsors in the UK, Ray Winston from Scum pops up at half time to tell you what bets he's going to place. These are highly prized advertising spots that are very, very lucrative. It ties into the TV revenue, which again goes into the teams, and this is true the world over. That where gambling is legalized, it actually has a direct positive fiscal benefit for the sports that people want to place bets on. So there is good that can come from sports betting. The reason we don't have arrangements like this in esports yet, and the reason I think we will get there, but we don't have it yet, is simply because we don't have that infrastructure. We don't have an infrastructure even where one tournament organizer will talk to another tournament organizer. We don't have an infrastructure where one company's anti-cheat software, the secrets of which will be told to the other company so we can stamp cheaters out. We won't do that. They look at each other as competitors in a very niche market. So if we can't even get all the companies that effectively do the same thing round a table to talk, then how can we bring outside people that maybe have something to benefit from, to profit from? There's this air of distrust, which I don't necessarily think should exist. So what happened was CSGO Lounge, which is the prominent site that everybody knows for CSGO betting, it's almost like the infrastructure and the development around betting outgrew even the tournament infrastructure. So with that in mind, we were always going to run into problems like this down the road. It was always going to happen. There was always going to be teams that threw matches for profit. That was always coming. And yet, despite having, hundreds, over 100 years of regulated sports to draw on, esports didn't draw on it. Despite match fixing having cropped up in other esports, CSGO didn't draw on it. This is a repeated mistake that we continually make in our industry, where we think, well, we'll just do it our way, and all the stuff we've seen and everything else that's kind of akin to what we do, it'll never bother us, it'll never happen. And of course it does. That's just, human nature. That there is an inherent, my old economics lecturer used to say it to me, that there is inherent in human nature is greed. You will never change that. I don't know if he was right or not. He was perhaps a cynic, but that's what he used to think. And we see it time and time again, wherever there are opportunities to augment profits, to enhance earnings. It happens. People will break the rules and deviate from them. The fact that we didn't even have rules, as soon as CSGO Lounge came onto the landscape, there should have been rules about betting. The fact that we had to wait for a few scandals before we said, hey, maybe players shouldn't be placing bets. Who knew, right? Like, this happened in baseball, I think, like back in the 1920s or something. But of course, we learn our lessons late in esports. That's how we do things. So for all of you who are angry at CSGO Lounge and any other betting website, let's talk a bit about the cultures, the areas where match fixing occurs and why it occurs. So the environment where fixing flourishes, there's two consistents, and the first is fairly obvious: poverty. So when we look at sports where professional athletes in a country that has a terrible economy, they're not even getting paid a lot of money. Sure, it's above the national average, but actually it's still relatively poor. Some of these people, I've heard about teams in the not too distant past in the Romanian league where people were getting paid in grain and food. It's insane sometimes to think about football and sports as this holistic thing. We think about the Americanized version, the European version, where it's got all this money. It isn't like that the world over, yet these people have the same interests but not necessarily the same economic benefits. So this is why whenever there's these big match-fixing scandals and we look at where they are kind of centralized, we're talking Africa, where even the national teams out there have become embroiled in throwing and match-fixing scandals. We're talking Eastern Europe, where former satellite states, as they're called, former parts, nations that have only just seized independence from dictators, have been ravaged by civil war. They haven't got the infrastructure for sports. It's just, you wouldn't expect them to, not in such a short space of time. So of course match fixing goes on there as well, and ultimately, if you think about it, it's not entirely unreasonable. It's dishonest, it's immoral, but when you have come from a background of poverty, of maybe even some would argue cultural poverty, and there's money on the table to do something that's dishonest, You know, I don't think necessarily you can hate on people that are trying to get paid for the first time in their lives quite as much as we can with the second example, which I'll come to in a second. But how I want to tie this to Counter-Strike is, let's think back to the NA scene. Let's think back, you know, there was no big organisations coming into the NA scene. We knew there would be, but the game was growing, and the NA scene, its infrastructure was absolutely destroyed in Counter-Strike terms after CGS. Players had got used to a very high standard of living, very high wages, and when that collapsed and organisations were left without a lot of sponsors, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of interest in the game, a lot of those players were like, well, we're not going to play for free. We won't effectively prostitute and demean ourselves to play this game for anything less than what we were used to. It really set back the NA scene by quite some distance, which was incredible, because it was the, you know, Europeans a lot of the time were envious. We were looking over at the organisations in A, going, look at that, look at how amazing they are. Look at the, you know, they've got these jerseys, they've got amazing players, they've got great brands. Everybody wanted to watch those teams. And yet there just wasn't the infrastructure had been completely leveled. People had invested too much in the pipe dream of CGS, and it really come back to bite everyone on the ass. That's what happened. So we fast forward to the CSGO era, and North America's just kind of clawing back. You know, the only domestic league is ESEA, and they're putting Bitcoin miners on your PC. You know, everything else doesn't even come close. You've got, you know, no real big organisations that want to take the tentative steps to support teams. Those that did weren't offering big salaries. I mean, when I was covering the stories about when the first big organisations were coming in and picking up CSGO teams in North America, the salaries made me laugh. You were talking about $400, $800 a month. That is not a salary. That isn't a salary at all. To call it a salary is really derisory and insulting. So imagine being a player, and you're one of the top players in the world, and you're going to get to go to Europe, and you're going to get to compete, and you're earning the equivalent of a fucking pizza delivery job, which you'd only have to work weekends for, not the 40, 50 hours of fucking scrims a week that you have to put in to even be considered a top competitor in this game. So the organisations, the overall devaluation, if that is a fucking word, of Counter-Strike contributed towards people being like, well, look at this skins betting thing, we can make more money from that. So if you have a culture where you can make more money from, way more money as well, from doing something dishonest, or you can go the honest route and reap no rewards, more people will be tempted by dishonesty. Again, it's human nature. That shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. The other area where you get match fixing, disparity of wealth. So we had a scandal recently in the UK, which actually collapsed at trial because of the way that the journalist acquired the information. And I find it hilarious that I get called unethical. We had a journalist in the UK who basically dressed up as a sheikh, a fake sheikh or sheikh from an Emirati country. And he went out to people and basically induced them to do what is called spot fixing or spot betting, which is, you know, you don't bet on the result, you bet on one aspect of the game. So however many yellow cards, getting a red card in the game, and you can place a bet on whether that'll happen. You go to one player, so the rest of the team don't know about it, and you say, get yourself sent off in this game so we can place a bet and say you'll get a red card. He does something ridiculous, gets sent off. They pay the player £50,000, and you know, that's how it works. And of course, all the gamblers who bet on the red card, who knew the fix was in, they get lots of profits. And like I said, that's called spot betting, spot fixing. I'm sure will come up against something like that very soon, where you'll be able to bet on how many teams get rounds and this sort of thing. And we should be hugely dubious when that becomes an option. But anyway, because he pretended to be a sheikh and effectively acted in a fashion not unlike what you might call entrapment, the case collapsed at trial. It was deemed to have been you know, acquired in an illegal and dubious manner. The evidence couldn't be relied upon. But these players, I think we can safely say, undoubtedly did say these things to this journalist. That wasn't really the area in which it fell down. So That's happening in the UK Football League. So why is that? Well, okay, because the average Premier League wage is between £20,000 and £30,000 a week. £20,000 and £30,000 per week, depending on which study you read. There's been a couple. Some places at about 22, some places as high as 30. You've got players in the league like Wayne Rooney and Sergio Aguero who make £300,000 a week. Let's go down one division. So, you know, if you've got invite, let's go down to Maine. Let's go down from the Premier League to the Championship. Average wage, £4,000 a week. 4,000, and that includes all of the people that got relegated from the Premier League that were on big wages. So those 3 teams that get demoted every year really inflate that average. So imagine what the other players are making. That's the second tier of English football. You get Championship teams that have very good runs, make it to finals of FA Cups, and yet here they are being paid these ridiculously small wages by comparison to Premier League, because again, all the things we talked about, the gambling revenue, the TV money. So those players are looking up to the Premier League players, and they're saying, wow, you know, like, look at what they're getting paid. Look at what they're getting paid compared to us. So what do you think they're going to do? Here's what they're going to do. They're going to find other ways to supplement that income and be like, well, you know, I might never be a Premier League player. I'm never going to be Wayne Rooney. I'm 26. My time to shine, my time for that big transfer has fallen through. It's not going to happen. How can I make some extra money? And this is what some of these players have done. We've had numerous match-fixing scandals in the UK. It's not that because we're a big, shiny league in a westernized country that we're immune to this. We're absolutely not. And it's because of disparity of wealth. So again, let's talk about Counter-Strike and disparity of wealth. We've got 2 tiers of teams. We've got the professional teams that actually lead, but, you know, by contrast to the second tier, a very good life. I would argue it's nowhere near enough. We've talked about how the salaries aren't enough. But imagine being a second tier team, a team that doesn't get salaried, a team that can only go to events. It's paid for, sure, but, you know, you are a walking billboard while you're there. You've got your advertising, you know, logos and everything. You're a walking billboard. There's a reason to send you. Yet you won't see any of the fiscal benefits that the organisation gets. You go to a tournament, you're a walking advertisement, you play, maybe you win, maybe you don't, and then you go home. And if you don't win, you don't get any prize money. And what prize money you do get, organisation takes approximately anything between 10 and 25% of that to try and supplement the costs of sending the team. So again, that's what we've got. We've got disparity of earnings, because those second tier teams are looking up at the pro teams and thinking, well, we'll never be that good. We'll never get that opportunity. We'll never be able to beat them. Our prize money gets rinsed. We don't earn a salary. How can we earn more money? And that's why we've seen these lesser teams throwing in these exhibition matches, because ultimately that's all they have the opportunity to do, which doesn't excuse it. It's deplorable. I think this entire passage probably makes it sound like I'm being sympathetic to match fixers, which I'm absolutely not. I think it's disgusting. I've already watched it effectively destroy one competitive game, you know, with Brood War. Anyone who watched Brood War, which, you know, I wasn't a big fan of Brood War. I won't sell that myth. I won't fake that. I absolutely wasn't. But I caught the tail end of that scene and I watched it go down in flames, and I reported on that match fixing scandal, and I watched those people, you know, go to jail and get lifetime bans from involvement in esports. It was devastating. There are people who loved Brood War who can't bring themselves to even talk about it anymore because of the absolute shock at being sold a lie for so long. Because it wasn't just one player. Everyone says Saviour. He was the poster boy for it, but there were several others. And they rigged games together, and everyone was like, well, hang on. All of these storylines, all of these things I invested in, it was a lie. It was bullshit. Really hurt and upset a lot of people that cared about that game, and that game was huge. So again, I absolutely do not sympathise. I do not support match fixing, but we need to understand the culture that leads to it, and organisations play a part in it. When you don't reward a player, when you don't incentivise a player, to be honest, to do things the professional way, when you treat somebody, you expect to act professional and put in the same hours as a professional, and then you give them amateur rewards, this is going to happen. So organisations, you need to step up your game and play an active role in preventing match fixing. The next thing is rules. Okay, the rules we've got are completely insufficient. They are not fit for purpose. We have some vague chicken shit rules about maybe you don't bet. But then, can I get a friend to bet for me? What if I bet on games that I'm not directly involved in? Bullshit. There's got to be a line in the sand where pro players, if you compete in any league, ladder, you cannot bet. You just cannot bet. You can't bet on neighbouring leagues and ladders. And if you think that sounds ridiculous and over the top and unenforceable, what I'm going to do is, again, to bring it back to soccer because it's quite topical. We've had match fixing there. I'm going to read you some of the rules that we have for betting here in the UK in our soccer league. And these have been deemed not fit for purpose just recently in light of this scandal that we're going to revise these. We're going to make them even stricter. But listen to how strict they are. And this is taken from the official FA betting booklet, the 2013 version. You are not allowed to place any bet on a game involving your club. Okay, fair enough. We've got that in CSGO. You are not allowed to place any bet on a game in a competition, such as a cup competition or the league itself in which your club plays. This includes competitions that your club is due to play in but has not yet started, and competitions you are no longer in if you've been knocked out. You are not allowed to place a bet on a game or competition in which you have any influence, either direct or indirect. You cannot place a bet on any under 18 matches, so you can't even bet on like junior level games. You are not allowed to ask or instruct anyone to place any of the bets above on your behalf. And the above includes all bets related to the following: results of a particular match, any event in the progress of a match, such as yellow cards, that's that spot betting we talked about, any other events involving your club or other clubs playing in the same league competition. Then they go on. They say the above includes bets on all domestic, European and worldwide matches. So you can't even bet on, I don't know, some small league, like the Chinese amateur league. No, you cannot do it. You cannot do it. You simply cannot do it. If you're a professional footballer, one of the things you are going to have to sacrifice is your ability to gamble on football. End of discussion. That is it. And it goes on. All players registered with a club are deemed to participate in every match. So even if you're a substitute, even if you're a named substitute on a roster, even if you're never going to play, you're there as backup for like the worst of the worst situation, you forfeit the right to bet. So again, those players, and we've seen some of them who kind of hover around and just, they're on rosters but they never really play, and we know they're involved in betting. That has to stop as well. That absolutely has to stop, because it raises too many questions whether you're being dishonest or not. And it also says all employees and officers at a club are deemed to participate in every match. So managers, coaches, analysts, whatever we're going to get into as CSGO expands, they can't place bets either, and rightly so. Because we've seen it in Korea where managers have effectively bullied teams to throw games. They've threatened them with, eviction from the team house and threats against their family, threats of violence against them to throw games. And there was a famous example. You can look this up. There was a player called Promise who actually attempted suicide off the back of this. Shocking story, and something we absolutely do not want to see replicated in any other esport anywhere. And this is why we need to get a solid set of rules in. And people say, we need an arbitrary body. We need an arbitrary body. We just need to agree on a rule set for everybody to enforce. And then together, collectively, we will act as an arbitrary body, whether we bear that label or not. The other thing they have in the official rules is use of inside information. You are not allowed to use inside information to place a bet or to instruct someone else to place a bet on your behalf. So inside information, we saw this come up with this match fixing allegation, which was basically the pro players were being told, it's a fix. We've heard it's going to be a fix. You should probably bet the other way. Those people who place bets on that, and change their minds, there needs to be a ruling about that. There has to be something in place that says if you bet on a game after hearing and using that inside information, that needs to be something that's punishable, because again, we haven't got any rules about that specific thing. A lot of people brought it up with Shazam and other players who supposedly placed bets after being told the fix is in. And they said, well, that makes them as bad as the fixes. It doesn't. And right now, there are no rules or legislature under which to penalise them. You're going to have to let that go. If it enrages you and infuriates you, good. You're probably on the same side I am. But I accept you can't retroactively add a rule that's never been there before and then punish someone under that rule. You've got to let all of those people skate, and you've just got to use it for your own, knowledge, for your betterment of the game that goes on. You have to put in some legislature about that. And they also say in the official FA rules about match fixing, you are not allowed to accept from or offer to anyone any bribes, gifts or rewards of any nature in relation to seeking to influence the outcome, result or conduct of a match or competition. This is the key part. You must immediately report to the FA any approach or any offer of a bribe, gift, reward made to you or any other participant related to seeking to influence the outcome, result or conduct of a match or competition. And this isn't going on. There's this culture of silence that we've got, that, because the North American scene in particular, and I know fixes go on in Europe, but let's just focus on North America for now. The North American scene in particular is so cliquey. It's one big fucking treehouse. It has been for years. That if you don't, what's the word? If you don't kind of bow down, if you don't listen to the unofficial rules of what you need to do to be in that treehouse, a lot of people's careers are hampered, hindered. You've got to play ball with these people, because if you don't, you won't get opportunities on the top teams. You'll have your name smeared at every opportunity that they get. And we've seen this time and time again. It's been that way certainly since my involvement in Counter-Strike Source. It was always a big clique. And now with the match fixing thing, people are like, look, this is happening, but you can't talk about it. If you talk about it, we're going to make sure there's consequences for you. But we've got to get away from that. There needs to be somebody out there who says, look, if the match fixing is in, come to us confidentially and we will do something about it. Again, in SEVO, players went to SEVO and said, we've been offered, and they just said that isn't evidence. Okay, that wasn't enough for them to look at the games, to put forward a penalty. That's not good enough if you want to stamp out match fixing. Leagues have an absolute burden to provide an area where players can go, give confidential information about illegal, well, not illegal, but you know what I mean, illegal within the term of the game's rules, activity, and report it without any reprisals and without anything coming back to haunt them, to bite them on the ass. That isn't there. Again, no infrastructure. It's far easier to keep the secret and make the money than it is to report the people that are doing the wrong thing. That's shocking, frankly, in any league that hasn't thought about that. You're just behind the curve. You've got to change it. So, the final thing is that what we absolutely need moving forward as well is a spirit of cooperation. This is a huge problem, and a problem we can only tackle together with cooperation, talking to each other. And all the leagues, ladders, tournaments, cups, everything, all of those competitions, all the people who run competitions like that need to come together, get round a table, and we need to talk about what's going on in each person's league. When you and you know who also needs to be there? CSGO Lounge. Whether you like it or not, they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They provide a service, and they've been brilliant in investigating this. They're the people with the information. They're the people that have proven that everything that was said in those text messages was true. We found the betting patterns. Now, imagine if they could work directly with leagues, and imagine this for how it would work. So a player hears about a fix, they go to the league, or a game is really suspicious. I would even go as far as to say, for the problem we're facing now, this needs to happen as a matter of course. Every time a significant underdog, I'm not talking about 56 and 44%, I'm not even talking about 70-30, I'm talking about 94 and 6%. I'm talking about games that make no sense when you apply all of your knowledge to Counter-Strike. Every time a result like that happens, the league should go to CSGO Lounge and say, hi, we had this result. We've got no reason necessarily to think there was any fixes, but can you tell us if there was any strange betting patterns around that game? CSGO Lounge can then go in, Look at the bets. They've recently developed a new app to make this process a lot easier for themselves, because the work they've been doing with me was taking days at a time, but they realize this is going to be a problem ongoing. CSGO Lounge want to tackle this problem head on. They're doing things to do that. So CSGO Lounge can go in, look at the bets, and they can go, well, actually, yeah, we've got one person who placed bets on 10 different accounts. He bet max value. And then you can look at that person's ties, who does he link to, and you can have a proper investigation. That should just happen as a matter of course. That's how it works in sports. Every time a game looks suspicious, it's almost like the result gets put on hiatus. No, we do not acknowledge that result happened. In snooker and in other sports, whenever there is a flurry of betting activity, there's an investigation straight away. Now, the reason that can happen in mainstream sports is everyone talks to everyone. The bookies talk to the people who control that particular sport, and investigations happen. The media flag stuff and say, look, these are our findings. So this spirit of communication helps stamp it out. CSGO Lounge, they've got the tools at their disposal. These bets, this match fixing, it leaves a trail. I know, because I've found one. It leaves a trail. If you look for it, you will find it, if any wrongdoing has been done. So tournament organisers and CSGO Lounge need to come together now, spirit of cooperation, and of course finally Valve. Finally Valve have got to realise that in the same way VAC bans, they had to come up with a piece of legislature that said if you get VAC banned, you can't compete in a major, because this is a crowd-funded effort. This is your money that goes towards these tournaments, and this is Valve enabling that process to happen. So they've come forward and given this community ruling, which the community are really happy with. Tournament organisers are happy with it because they've got Valve's blessing to enforce this rule. There's none of the bullshit that comes with people trying to appeal or wriggle out of it or use European legislature to be like, well, this is affecting my livelihood, and that's a particular problem in Europe. I might even do a video separately on that because it's crazy. You wouldn't believe it. But the reality is, Valve can just be like, look, we can see the skins. We've got access to their accounts. And we can come out and tell you directly, tournament organisers, whenever there's something suspicious. It's another reason why Valve needs a league commissioner, or whatever you want to call it, someone who basically handles all of the esports output. Because I think with the VAC bans, we've had a few people who claimed, oh, my brother did it, the old classics, and Valve never came out and said, actually, his brother didn't do it. And they probably should, because, the community have a right to know. We're funding these tournaments. So I hope that Valve will get involved. I know they're taking a look at this. I made sure of that myself. But even so, all they really need to do, whether they say anything in public or not, is empower the tournaments to take action. But again, the spirit of cooperation is what's going to stamp it out. You do not need to boycott skins betting. You do not need to boycott CSGO Lounge. You need to target the dishonest people that are making a joke out of our game, a joke out of our scene, a joke out of our community, and a joke out of you, ultimately. And it isn't CSGO Lounge, and it's never going to be them. It's going to be these people who throw games for skins. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I hope that's cleared up a few things and my thoughts on the matter, and I'll see you next time.